Frank DeCicco was a man's man. Tough, smart, with a streetwise attitude that caused him to be well respected, not only within the Gambino family, but with other families as well. DeCicco was born on November 5th, 1935, in Bath Beach, a neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York, known for its Mafia connections. Both his father and uncle were members of the Gambino family. One could say Frank was born into the life and knew nothing else. Around 1973, DeCicco worked with Lucchese soldier Anthony Gaspipe Casso, robbing diamond dealers and hijacking trucks throughout New York. Future boss of the Gambino family, Paul Castellano, liked DeCicco for numerous reasons. He considered Frank a stand-up guy and one who had a high level of intelligence. Unlike most wise guys, Frank DeCicco had a brain. He was able to think, plan, and execute everything from a hit to a detailed labor racket. This made him a valuable asset, not only to the Gambinos in general, but Big Paul Castellano in particular. As a result of his contact and friendship with Castellano, Frankie D, or Frankie Cheech, as his friends like to call him, became heavily involved in labor racketeering, specifically the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Union, Local 282, in which he held a no-show job. With the death of the family namesake, Carlo Gambino, on October 5, 1976, and the appointment of Big Paul Castellano to boss, Frankie Cheech rose to the top of the family and the underworld. In 1978, Castellano gave DeCicco the order to have Sammy Gravano's brother-in-law, Nicholas Scabetta, permanently removed from the family rolls. The contract was issued in part to the fact that Scabetta had a serious addiction to drugs and had become an embarrassment to the family. It should be noted that in the HBO film Gotti, it is Sammy Gravano who pulls the trigger on his unsuspecting brother-in-law. However, in his autobiography, Underboss, Gravano writes that members of his crew actually carried out the murder contract and that he simply allowed it to happen. In 1983, Frank DeCicco received another important contract, one which would further cement his place in the family hierarchy. All of the heads of the 5 families were under intense scrutiny by the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force. It would only be a matter of time before the district attorney's office handed down RICO indictments against the bosses. Roy DeMeo, a feared killer within the family, was also under investigation. He was considered to be unstable by most. Waves of paranoia swept over Castellano, and he thought DeMeo might turn government informant. Castellano ordered DeMeo to be taken out. Given DeMeo's fearsome reputation, DeCicco found it difficult to find any family members who would take the job. Finally, Frankie recruited Gambino soldiers Anthony Center and Joseph Testa. The 2 hitmen murdered their capo DeMeo on January 10, 1983. DeMeo's body was found 10 days later, stuffed in the trunk of his car. DeCicco would probably have remained an unknown outside the Cosa Nostra world if it had not been for the events of 1985 and his friendship with John Gotti. New family boss Paul Castellano focused his attention on white-collar crimes, what most considered racketeering, while neglecting the bread and butter of the average street soldier. Castellano was making big money, went the complaint, but not for the family, not to be spread around, but money which went straight into his own pockets. The average soldier on the street was starving. Against the edict of both Gambino and Castellano, a no-drugs policy, members of John Gotti's crew began dealing just to survive. When this fact was made known, Gotti knew it was just a matter of time before his men, as well as himself, would be hit. Gotti believed he had no choice but to strike first. The only thing holding him back, which may have held Castellano back as well, was Neil Della Croce. But just 2 weeks after the death of Mr. Neil, Gotti struck, and he struck hard and fast. It was Frank DeCicco, who, though he enjoyed close ties with Castellano, joined the conspiracy with Gotti, Joseph Armoni, Sammy Gravano, and Frank Lucchesio. Frankie Cheech's job was to lure Castellano to a meeting which was to take place at Sparks Steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan. On December 16, 1985, Castellano and his underboss, Thomas Bellotti, were gunned down in one of the most sensational Mafia hits in recent memory. Gotti became the new boss, and DeCicco the family's underboss. According to Sammy the Bull, just before the Castellano hit, he and Frank DeCicco had a conversation in which they discussed John Gotti's upcoming role as boss. Gravano thought he should be the boss and not Gotti. DeCicco replied, "John's ego is too big. I could be his underboss, but he couldn't be mine. Look, he's got balls. He's got brains. He's got charisma. If we can control him to stop the gambling and all of his flamboyant bullshit, he could be a good boss. Sammy, I'll tell you what. We'll give him a shot. Let him be the boss. If it don't work out within a year, me and you, we'll kill him. I'll become the boss, and you'll be my underboss, and we'll run the family right." The murder of Castellano infuriated Genovese boss Vincent the Chin Gigante. This hit was not sanctioned by the commission, and only the commission can sanction a hit on a boss. In retaliation for the Castellano hit, the Chin gave the order to have Gotti taken down. He asked Lucchese boss Victor Amuso and Anthony Gaspipe Casso to plan the hit. To make it look like Zips, members of the Sicilian mafioso, had carried out the contract, it was decided that the best route to take was a car bomb. On April 13, 1986, just a little under 4 months since the Castellano hit, Herbert Pate, a Genovese associate, drove up to the Veterans and Friends Social Club in Dyker Heights, Brooklyn, where Gotti and DeCicco were supposed to be attending a meeting. Herbie walked toward DeCicco's car carrying 2 grocery bags and then, pretending to stumble, dropped one of the bags. As he was picking up the contents, Pate secretly attached a bomb to the underside of the car and then waited. Finally, DeCicco came out of the club, heading straight for his car. Pate saw who he thought was John Gotti standing next to the car as DeCicco reached in to grab something off of the front seat. The bomb was detonated. DeCicco was killed instantly. The other man ended up not being Gotti, but a Lucchese soldier, Frank Bellino. Unbeknownst to Pate, Gotti had decided not to attend the meeting at the last minute. Gravano later described the carnage after the explosion. "I saw Frankie DeCicco laying on the ground beside the car. With the fire, it could blow up again. I tried to pull him away. I grabbed a leg, but he ain't coming with it. The leg is off. One of his arms is off. I got my hand under him, and my hand went right through his body to his stomach. There's no ass. His balls, everything is blown completely off. I was wearing a white shirt. I looked at my shirt, amazed. There wasn't a drop of blood on it. The force of the blast, the concussion, blew most of the fluids out of Frankie's body. He had no blood left in him, nothing, not an ounce. Ironically, after the car bomb incident, Gambino explained that he never started his own car, and he had Luis Valerio drive him around. The loss of DeCicco was a terrible blow to the Gambinos. He was viewed as being the real brains of the family and one who could reason and control John Gotti. Without Frankie Cheech as second in command, Gotti's time as boss was marked by dissension and treachery. By the beginning of the 1990s, the Gambino power and influence began to wane.